You weren't supposed to notice it, not because it was hidden, not because it was classified, but because most discoveries don't announce themselves. They sit in plain sight, buried in routine, disguised as background noise. It starts small. It always does. A number slightly off baseline, a culture dish that behaves a fraction outside prediction, a replication curve that refuses to smooth out. You didn't create it. You just noticed it. And noticing is heavier than inventing. Inventing is ambition. Noticing is responsibility. That's the part they never put in textbooks. You've spent 20 years inside laboratories that all look the same. White walls, stainless steel benches, fluorescent lighting that hums faintly if you stay late enough, the smell of ethanol and warmed plastic, the low vibration of refrigeration units cycling through the night. You were never drawn to the spotlight. In university, while others competed for keynote invitations, you stayed in the data room adjusting error margins. You preferred spreadsheets to speeches, patterns to applause. Your childhood wasn't dramatic. A small apartment above a grocery store, a father who kept receipts in labeled envelopes, a mother who measured ingredients twice before cooking. Order mattered in your house. If something didn't fit, you didn't ignore it. You traced it. That habit followed you. Your doctoral thesis wasn't revolutionary. It was precise. Viral mutation rates across constrained environments, no bold claims, just documented anomalies and carefully annotated graphs. You built your career the same way. Year 1, lab assistant. Year 4, co-author. Year 9, project lead on adaptive strain modeling. Year 15, director of pathogen analytics for a mid-level research institute that most people outside the field have never heard of. You never chased funding headlines. You chased consistency. Every morning, you arrive at 6:40 a.m. before the rest of the team. You log into 3 systems: internal server, simulation environment, federal reporting portal. You check overnight growth metrics. You cross-reference replication drift. You flag anything outside 1.8% deviation. Most days, nothing happens. You go home at 7:15 p.m. You cook something simple. You read case studies before bed. Control lives in routine. The Institute doesn't become important overnight. It becomes necessary. You build a predictive modeling framework that tracks viral adaptation across constrained simulation environments. You refine the algorithm for 5 years. You remove redundant variables. You reduce processing time from 9 hours to 40 minutes. You increase predictive accuracy to 92.4%. Hospitals begin requesting your forecasts during regional outbreaks. Pharmaceutical companies license your mutation risk indices. Government agencies subscribe quietly. You don't give interviews. You publish in peer-reviewed journals with restrained titles. Observed acceleration in RNA viral plasticity under synthetic constraint. Nothing sensational, just data. Inside your lab, systems run efficiently. Sample intake follows a 3-tier chain of custody protocol. Every strain is barcoded, every simulation logged, every anomaly documented with timestamp, environment parameters, and probability projections. You teach your team one principle: assume error first. If a result looks extraordinary, rerun it, then rerun it again. You're not famous, but when something unusual happens in the field, your inbox fills. That's how the sample arrives. Routine transfer from a regional hospital cluster, 5 patients, mild respiratory distress. Standard viral panel inconclusive. The preliminary report flags it as likely mutation of a known strain. You assign it to Tier 2 analysis. Nothing urgent, just thorough. The culture dish should degrade at a predictable rate under the enzyme mix. It doesn't. You adjust the temperature by 0.3 degrees Celsius. You recalibrate pH to exact specification. You check reagent expiration dates. The sample still holds structure longer than it should. You log the deviation, 3.1% beyond expected decay threshold. You rerun it, same result. You isolate the genome and feed it into your adaptive simulation framework. The system models mutation patterns across 10,000 synthetic environmental pressures. Most strains scatter unpredictably. Noise dominates. This one converges. Within 37 simulated generations, it stabilizes into a more efficient configuration. Transmission probability increases by 14%. Immune evasion markers sharpen instead of diffuse. You check the algorithm. You check the seed values. You check for corrupted files. You rerun the simulation. Same result. You widen parameters, introduce random stress variables, starvation cycles, temperature shocks. It adapts faster, not randomly, efficiently. You lean back in your chair, not dramatically, just enough to create distance from the monitor. You've studied mutation for 2 decades. Mutation is messy, wasteful. Most changes weaken an organism before strengthening it. This is not messy. This is optimized. You draft an internal memo, subject line, anomalous adaptive acceleration preliminary findings. You attach data sets. No speculation, just charts, replication curves, and simulation logs. You recommend expanded sampling and immediate cross-institutional verification. You send it to 3 people: Institute Director, Federal Liaison, Biosecurity Oversight Board. You expect discussion, debate, perhaps skepticism. What you receive is silence, not the normal kind, not busy schedules. The server logs show your file accessed at 2:14 a.m. by credentials outside your listed distribution. You request IT to confirm. They respond with a short message, authorized review, no names. 2 days later, a government observer is assigned to your lab. He introduces himself without rank, plain suit, neutral voice. He doesn't interfere with procedures. He doesn't ask many questions. He watches. Your team notices, productivity tightens, conversations shorten. You're instructed to route all external communications through a new clearance channel. Publication drafts require pre-approval. Data exports are restricted. No announcement is made to the public. No emergency declaration, just additional layers. You continue testing. The virus resists standard antiviral compounds in vitro at a rate 22% higher than baseline relatives. Its surface proteins reconfigure in simulations after exposure to neutralizing antibodies. Not entirely immune, just faster. You calculate potential spread models using conservative assumptions. R0 at 1.6. In contained environments, possibly higher in dense urban settings, hospital burden projections within 6 months if unmitigated. You present this to the observer and the director in a closed meeting. They listen, they nod, they request the raw data. Funding increases the following week. Security protocols tighten. You are moved to a restricted wing of the building. Keycard access limited to 8 individuals. Windows replaced with reinforced panels. You didn't ask for any of this. You just noticed it. Your phone is replaced with a secured device. Personal email access disabled on institute networks. Travel requests require clearance. At home, you find yourself avoiding specifics in conversation. When someone asks about work, you say long week. You stop bringing documents home. You stop mentioning timelines. Your calendar fills with closed-door briefings. You begin working later, not because you're told to, because projections require constant updating. The virus continues to adapt under every simulation constraint you introduce. You attempt to design a containment strategy: multi-layer suppression, rapid detection, localized lockdown modeling, accelerated vaccine platform. You outline a 180-day mitigation window if response is immediate and coordinated. Your proposal is forwarded upward. You receive partial approval. Surveillance expansion prioritized. Public communication delayed pending further assessment. You notice discrepancies in reported case numbers from regional hospitals. Lower than your predicted baseline. You request clarification. The response references data normalization procedures. You stop asking directly. Access logs show additional reviews of your files, some at irregular hours. Your credentials are audited twice in 1 week. You begin storing redundant copies of critical data on encrypted drives. Not for exposure, for continuity. Your team shrinks, 2 researchers reassigned, 1 placed on administrative leave for a protocol deviation that you cannot verify. The observer remains. He starts asking specific questions. Now, not about the science, about worst-case scenarios, about failure thresholds, about mortality projections under delayed intervention. You answer with numbers, always numbers. At home, the lights feel brighter. the refrigerator hum sounds louder, you wake at 3:12 a.m. and check simulation updates remotely through the secure device. The virus crosses a new threshold in silico, partial vaccine escape after 52 generations. You adjust the model. Same result. You stop scheduling social events, you decline invitations. It becomes easier not to explain. Your world reduces to access codes, projection curves, clearance levels. You are escorted to a secondary facility outside the city for focused analysis. No media coverage, no public acknowledgement. The building has no signage. You are given temporary housing nearby. Sparse, functional, white walls again. You realize you haven't walked through a crowded public space in weeks. Control, once defined by routine, is now defined by restriction. Late at night in the secondary facility, you review the first data set again. The original culture dish, the initial anomaly, 3.1% deviation. It looks almost harmless on paper. You consider the sequence of events since then, each logical, each procedural, each justified by precaution. Knowledge expanded your authority. Then it narrowed your life. You were respected because you understood systems. Now you are monitored because you understand too much. Power never arrived dramatically. It accumulated in access privileges, closed meetings, encrypted channels. Then it shifted shape. You think about control. In the lab, control means isolating variables, adjusting temperature, measuring response, predicting outcome within a margin of error. Outside the lab, control is statistical, fragile, dependent on institutions that weigh optics against intervention. You run another projection. If immediate global coordination occurs within 30 days, mortality stabilizes below projected pandemic thresholds. If delayed by 90 days, healthcare infrastructure in multiple regions collapses under load. You send the updated report. Response: under review. You sit with the numbers. Survival is a curve. Living is something else. You used to believe that understanding a threat meant gaining leverage over it. That clarity translated to safety. Now clarity isolates you. You eat alone in the facility cafeteria at off hours. You speak in measured summaries. You stop expressing speculation, even privately. You document everything, because documentation is the last form of control you have left. Months pass in incremental updates. Case numbers rise in patterns that match your early projections. Public statements remain cautious. Interventions staggered. You are invited to fewer meetings now. Decisions occur at levels above your clearance. Your role narrows to analysis. One evening, you return to your temporary housing and open the original memo you sent, anomalous, adaptive acceleration, preliminary findings. You read your own words, clinical, precise, almost detached. You didn't exaggerate, you didn't speculate, you noticed. Across the country, in another laboratory that resembles the one where you started 20 years ago, a junior researcher reviews a routine sample from a new cluster. White walls, stainless steel benches, fluorescent lights humming faintly overhead. A number appears slightly off baseline. The culture dish doesn't degrade normally. The replication curve refuses to smooth out. He hesitates before logging the anomaly. He considers marking it as instrument error. Then he reruns the test. Same result. You close your laptop. You go home that night knowing one thing. You were the first person who understood what was coming.